Did Vikings really wear helmets with horns? This is a question that has sparked numerous debates among historians and archaeologists alike. Picture the quintessential Viking warrior. What do you see? Most likely you're visualizing a burly, bearded figure brandishing a mighty axe and, of course, donning a helmet adorned with menacing horns. This image has become synonymous with the seafaring Norsemen who once roamed the seas of northern Europe. But where did this stereotype originate? The image of the horned Viking helmet seems to trace its roots back to the Romantic era of the 19th century. During this period, artists, writers, and musicians were consumed with the idea of expressing emotion and individualism. They often looked to the past for inspiration, particularly to periods and cultures they considered to be untamed or primitive. The Vikings, with their reputation for fearlessness in battle and exploration, fit this bill perfectly. One of the most common depictions of Vikings during this era was in the form of operatic characters, most famously in Richard Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen. Here, the Viking characters were often portrayed wearing horned helmets, a visual cue that has stuck around ever since. But it wasn't just the Romantics who were taken with the idea of horned Vikings. The sagas, epic tales passed down orally over generations before finally being written down in the Middle Ages, often described warriors wearing all manner of fantastic attire. Some of these sagas do mention helmets with horns. However, it's important to remember that these sagas were as much about entertainment as they were about historical record. They celebrated larger-than-life heroes and their fantastical exploits, often blurring the lines between fact and fiction. But is this depiction of the Viking warrior accurate, or is it merely a product of artistic license and romantic imagination? As we delve deeper into this topic, we will examine archaeological evidence, consider the practicality of horned helmets, and explore the Vikings' own cultural beliefs to reveal the truth. If we want to get to the heart of the matter, we need to turn to archaeology, the science that seeks to uncover the truth about the past. When it comes to our horned helmet conundrum, archaeological evidence, or rather the lack thereof, plays a crucial role. You see, despite the widespread belief in horned Viking helmets, we have yet to dig up a single one from the Viking Age. That's right, not one. This absence of evidence is telling, suggesting that the horned helmet may be more a product of our imagination than historical reality. Consider the Viking Age helmets we have found. One of the most well-preserved examples was unearthed in Germanbu, Norway. This 10th century artifact, often referred to as the Germanbu helmet, is a spectacle to behold. But guess what? No horns. Similarly, other helmet finds from the Viking Age, like those from Valsgard in Sweden and the British Isles, also lack the iconic horns. These helmets tell a different story. They depict a design that is functional, practical, and tailored for warfare. The Germanbu helmet, for instance, features a rounded iron cap and a protective guard covering the eyes and nose. This design provides ample protection while minimizing the risk of the helmet being knocked off during combat. Horns, on the other hand, would present a convenient handle for an enemy to grab or strike. Hardly a feature conducive to survival on a medieval battlefield. So what does all this mean? Well, if horned helmets were a standard part of Viking attire, we would expect to see them in the archaeological record, but we don't. Instead, we find practical, hornless helmets designed for the rigors of combat. This leads us to a critical realization. The popular image of the Viking warrior, horned helmet and all, is likely more fiction than fact, more myth than reality. So, based on archaeological evidence, it seems that the horned Viking helmet is more myth than reality. Let's consider the practicality of a horned helmet in battle. Would it be a help or a hindrance? Now, let's think about this for a moment. You're a Viking, a warrior of the north, stepping onto the battlefield with a helmet adorned with horns. It might look intimidating, sure, but would it really be practical? Imagine the weight of those horns on your head. Helmets are already heavy, and adding horns would only increase that weight. This could potentially slow you down, or even cause neck strain over time, which is definitely not ideal in combat. Now let's think about movement. With horns sticking out from either side of your head, moving around quickly and efficiently could become a challenge. Navigating through dense forests, ducking under low branches, or even just moving in close quarters with your fellow warriors would be made significantly more difficult. But the real kicker comes when we start considering combat situations. Horns on a helmet would provide a perfect handle for an enemy to grab onto. A good yank, and you're off balance, at the mercy of your opponent. There's also the risk of the helmet being knocked off entirely if struck at the right angle. And let's not forget about the potential danger to your fellow warriors. Those horns could easily become a hazard in the heat of battle, accidentally injuring allies in close quarters combat. So, while the image of a Viking charging into battle with a horned helmet might seem dramatic and fearsome, the reality would likely be far less glamorous. In fact, it's more likely that such a helmet would put the wearer at a significant disadvantage. In the end, the practicality of a horned helmet in battle is questionable at best. From a logistical standpoint, the cons vastly outweigh the pros. The added weight, restricted movement, potential for injury, and the risk of being disarmed make these helmets far from ideal for combat. From a practical standpoint, horned helmets would have been more of a liability than an asset in the heat of battle. To understand why Vikings might not have worn horned helmets, we should also consider their culture and beliefs. The Vikings were a pragmatic and resourceful people. They were seafarers and warriors, but also farmers and traders. Every aspect of their life was imbued with a sense of practicality and functionality. This extended to their clothing and armor. It wasn't just about looking fearsome. It was about survival, efficiency, and utility. Now, let's delve into their beliefs. The Vikings had a rich tapestry of myths and legends, which shaped their perception of the world and the afterlife. They believed in Valhalla, a majestic, enormous hall, located in Asgard, ruled over by the god Odin. This was where the bravest warriors went after death, to feast and fight endlessly. In this context, imagine a Viking preparing for battle or for the journey to the afterlife. Would they choose a cumbersome, ornamental helmet that might impede their fighting skills, or would they opt for a more practical, functional piece of armor? Furthermore, the Vikings were not just warriors, but also skilled craftsmen. Their metalwork and jewelry show a keen appreciation for design and detail. They had the skills to make elaborately decorated helmets if they wanted to, but their designs were always grounded in functionality. Ornamentation never compromised the utility of an item. Even their gods and goddesses, as depicted in their art and literature, were not typically shown wearing horned helmets. The image of a Viking warrior sporting a horned helmet is more a product of popular culture than historical reality. In the Viking worldview, practicality and functionality were paramount, further supporting the argument against horned helmets. So, did Vikings really wear helmets with horns? The evidence suggests otherwise. As we've journeyed through the realms of myth, archaeology, practicality, and culture, it's become clear that the image we've often pictured, a Viking brandishing a horned helmet, is more fantasy than fact. Let's recap our journey. We delved into the depths of the myth of horned helmets, tracing its origins to misconceptions and artistic liberties taken in the 19th century. This image, though captivating, is not supported by the archaeological record. Despite extensive excavations across the Viking world, not a single horned helmet dating back to the Viking Age has been found. We then examined the practicality of such a helmet in warfare. It turns out that horns on a helmet would have been more of a hindrance than a help in the heat of battle. They would have made the helmet unwieldy and could have even endangered the wearer. It's hard to imagine the pragmatic Vikings choosing such impractical headgear. And finally, we explored the Viking culture and belief systems. The Vikings were a people who valued functionality and efficiency, especially in their weapons and armor. Their helmet designs were focused on protection, not on creating an imposing image. Horns, while perhaps visually impressive, would not have added any practical benefits. In the end, our image of the horned Viking helmet is a fabrication, a result of misunderstandings and misinterpretations of historical and archaeological evidence. It's a powerful reminder of how our perceptions of the past can be shaped by the present, and how important it is to look beyond the myths to uncover the truth. While the image of the horned Viking helmet may persist in popular culture, the reality, it seems, was quite different. The Vikings, it